this your place?
No. No, I live with my mom.
Oh.
Yeah. You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
Live from the basement of YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and on today's show, have TaskRabbit, Instacart, DoorDash, and others taken over your wallet and your life? Has anything been enhanced as they promise? Today, we dive into the favor economy and maybe save you some cash while making you a few more friends. Helping us with this discussion is a guy who's not only interested in catching up to financial independence, he also likes making new friends. He's the host of Catching Up to 5 podcast, Bill Yount. And the guy who's always your friend on this show, it's Doc G. Plus, the woman who's helping Manhattanites warm up to the idea of better money skills from Afford Anything, Paula Pant. And if you know, you know. But for those of you who don't, at the midway point, we'll take a break and shine a light on my incredible trivia question. And now, a guy who's here for the free coffee. Hope you like Senka. It's Joe Saul-Sehy.
It's so funny. We're live here on YouTube, and I put I'm here for the free desserts. Now I guess I'm here for the coffee and desserts. Happy Friday, everyone. We're super happy you're here with us. And man, I love LOVE, this discussion that we have today, because hopefully we're going to not only save you some money in your wallet, we're also going to really hopefully enhance your life if we do this well. No, the bar is high. Paula Pant is here. Paula, the bar is high. You ready? Are you all stretched out?
Ooh, yeah, stretched. Reaching as far as I can. Yeah, this is going to be Olympic caliber.
Oh my God, she just showed her guns. For people not watching the video, don't mess with Paula. She'll kick your butt. The other guy next to her on my screen showing his guns. We're super happy he's here with us from Catching Up to 5. It's about time we got him here, Bill Yount. Bill, how are you, man?
This has been a long time coming. I'm excited to be here and dive into this conversation about the little favor economy and how we can improve our lives and our monetary outlet.
Well, Catching Up to 5, I know, is a passion project for you because you're a guy that was trying to catch up.
Yeah, I got a late start. I was 50 when I woke up to most things financial. Heck, I didn't know what a net worth statement was at that point. I mean, I was ignorant with a capital I.
You got to know what assets and liabilities you have. So I guess you do need your net worth statement. I just rarely think of it in those terms. But what's funny is that so many people don't think about it at all. Bill, was there like a Phoenix from the flame moment? Was there wow, like you woke up one day? Was there some hard reality that hit? What was the turning point?
I turned 50 and I realized nobody else was going to take care of me. And I was on my own.
It was just fear.
So it was me and my wife against the world. And somehow we thought, it'll just take care of itself. And 20 years went by from when we started our jobs, and we were at the other end of the funnel of life, as we call it. And we were, burgeoning empty nesters, and we had to figure our finances out.
So you and Jackie have an awesome show around this idea. You're talking to and for a lot of other people catching up to 5. Tell us a little bit about the podcast.
Oh, this was a little twinkle in my eye, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I was looking for a partner to do this because I needed an accountability partner. And I first found my first co-host, Becky Heptig.
She's so awesome. She's been on the show.
Yeah, she is awesome. She has a great story and is sort of the godmother of Catching Up to 5. Everybody misses her now. I have Jackie Cummins-Koski as co-host of the show. She brings a whole new sort of energy to the show. She was a late starter, grew up in poverty, retired at 49. I get to work with some incredible people, and we talk to an incredible group of people who feel like they're the lost generation. They're the silent generation. Jordan just had a show with a guest talking about us. And it was nice to hear another show talk about late starters and how do we catch up. Well,
it's funny. Jackie, your co-host, wrote the book on financial independence, Fire for Dummies. Like that's
exactly right here. I'm the big D.
But I love that. We can all do it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be rocket scientist. We just talked to blogger Darius Faroo, and he said, the big thing we all have available to us is just stop doing dumb stuff. It's pretty amazing. Speaking of, you mentioned the name Jordan. We've got him here. Jordan Grumman, aka Doc G, is here from Earn and Invest. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, and I'm contemplating what Bill just said. This whole idea of we're just waiting for someone to save us, right? Just waiting for something to change or someone to do it for us, and not just money, but in life, right? How many of us are at that point where we're like, things should be better or different, but we're waiting for someone else to do it for us? So, Bill, that really hit me as I was listening to you talk about it.
Well, and I'm wondering if that's what's going on right now, because for you, does financial independence mean like moving in with other people, being at somebody else's house and not your own?
At this point, I'm at my parents, so I'm trying to be anywhere but my own house, where they're pretty much on any given day tearing it apart or trying to put it back together because we're doing major construction. So yes, that financial independence to me is being homeless.
I'm happy it's not just me in mom's basement. It's not just me.
Now I'm in mom's extra bedroom. How about that?
Perfect. Well, we got a great show today. We're going to talk about DoorDash, and we're going to talk about TaskRabbit and all of these other little helper things that the internet has brought us. And we're going to question these more than just, are they hurting your wallet? A good friend of ours, Katie from the Money with Katie show, she had a wonderful piece, and we'll link to it on our show notes page. You won't need to read it to have some fun with us, but if you'd like to, just head to stackingbenjamins.com and take a look at the show notes. Besides Bill Yount being here, Doc, do you know what also makes Fridays just super special here on the show?
Everything.
Yeah. Yes. But there's one very special thing. It's the fact that Friday episodes are brought to you by State Farm. That's why. Not only does State Farm sponsor every Friday episode now of the Stacking Benjamin Show, we also have a few more sponsors that make this show free. Here is one more, and we'll be right back to kick things off. We've got Paula Pant here. Bill Yount is here. Doc G's here. Let's get this party started. All right, as I mentioned in the open, our piece today comes to us from Money with Katie. Before we get to Katie's piece, let's just talk about your usage of these apps. Bill, let's start with you as our guest of honor. You use TaskRabbit, DoorDash, Instacart. You using these options to make your life easier?
We use DoorDash. We've used that quite a bit. And what's interesting is we've done the delivery only. We don't meet who's delivering the food on the other side of the door. We get a text that it's there, they disappear, and magically the food
You don't
appears.
have to see anybody.
It is a very surreal experience. It took somebody cooking the food. It took somebody bringing the food. And it's just like Instacart. Exactly. It shows up.
I don't use DoorDash. What's the premium you pay to DoorDash a meal?
Oh, it's easily a third of the cost of the meal. It's not insignificant.
Paula, you live a busy life there in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. I always see every time I go to Manhattan, you got these delivery people and bicycles all over the place. Mm-hmm. Do you DoorDash, TaskRabbit, Instacart?
I use TaskRabbit all the time, constantly, for everything. I'm not big. I like to make my own food. Like here, you know, I've got salmon and couscous in a bowl. I've got some grapes. So I'm personally, I prefer groceries in terms of just eating clean. So I'm not big when it comes to like Uber Eats or DoorDash, but all my groceries get delivered. So,
it's all an Instacart kind of thing.
Yeah, it's technically I use this thing. It's called Misfits Market, which is imperfect food. So it's like quote unquote ugly produce, misshapen produce, the stuff that wasn't beautiful enough to be placed in grocery stores. So the produce is a little bit cheaper. So I place an order there once a week and they deliver all of my groceries to me. But by virtue of having all my groceries delivered, I don't have a car. You know, I'm able to live car free. So, because otherwise, besides groceries, what else would... groceries, Home Depot, IKEA, like those are the things you really need a car for.
Is there an upcharge on those, or do you get them at a discount because they're misfit, because they're not pretty?
I mean, so in my particular case, because I'm using misfit ugly produce, there's a discount on it. In the case of somebody who is using something like Instacart, which I don't use, but you know, for Instacart, there's a premium on that.
Oh, sure. I was asking specifically about the misfit stuff.
Yeah, with misfits, there's a discount.
Yeah, true story. OG Doug and I are the Misfit podcasters, so there's a discount for each of these shows. We just make them free because who would buy this thing? Doc G, how about you? Do you use DoorDash, Instacart, TaskRabbit?
I'm a Luddite. I don't use almost any of that stuff, although my kids will order something on DoorDash, or occasionally my wife will, but I have none of those apps. I think the only one I use regularly is probably Uber. When I'm out of town, I'll, use Uber to get a ride. But otherwise, honestly, I don't use any of that stuff.
Is it your wallet? Is it why?
I think so. For instance, TaskRabbit, I'm just likely to do it myself. For food, I'm likely to walk over and pick it up myself, or occasionally we'll use like the delivery from the place, but I'd rather actually go to the place, sit down and eat. And so I just don't find myself using that stuff that much. Maybe it's a generational thing. I just never grew up using those kind of services. And so I don't.
We don't use them a lot either. I mean, I've learned to a little bit from my kids, and I worry about their generation because they don't go shopping. They use these services, and it's a major drain on their finances. My wife and I, we're like two little old people. On Sundays, we get in the car, we drive a quarter of a mile away, we get in the grocery store, I push the cart, she gets the groceries. It's a social event for us.
It's nothing like a Saturday. That is old people. I hate to say it, Bill, but that is an old person thing. I love that too. Hey, it's date day. Let's head to the grocery store.
Well, we have alternative lifestyles. We wear our similar sweatsuits and go to the movies at noon and have a nap at 4.
We're living the dream for some of us. Our younger listeners like, what are you talking about? Wait till you get there, kids. Wait till you will get there, and it'll be fantastic. I need to do a little bit of a wind up after that beginning, because I wanted everybody to hear to what degree you guys use these before we dive into this. But this wind up is going to be a little bit long, because Katie, I think in this piece goes somewhere where I personally didn't expect when I started reading this. And I'm just going to read her open. She says, when we first moved to California, our next door neighbors, a very kind Gen X couple, knocked on our door and invited us over for dinner. In the following weeks, they'd pop over to check in, periodically lending a tool or an extra set of hands. One day I was stuck in traffic coming back from San Francisco. I texted my neighbor, hey, can you go over and let Beans out in the backyard? It was no problem. I walked their dog the next time they were out of town. Every time we exchanged excess baked goods or text one another to check in about the state of our respective PG&E bills, I feel that sparkling little reminder, someone's looking out for me and I them. I want to ask about your neighbors, because you also live in very different communities from each other. Bill, again, we'll go to you first. Do you know your neighbors? Do you have this type of Katie relationship with the neighbors where you take care of them and they take care of you?
So I get your intent. Put the new kid on the block on the spot because he asked you too many trivia questions on an episode he had you on.
Oh, the trivia comes later, my friend.
So your episode's coming out soon. I'm going to get you back for this one. But no, we met our neighbors when we first moved in because they all invited us over for a get-together. They did. And yeah, they did actually. Old-fashioned. A lot of them were actually Gen Xers, a little old-fashioned too. We still write thank you notes, that kind of thing. But I have an interesting neighbor story. We got to know one of our neighbors really well recently. We faced a health crisis. My wife was diagnosed with cancer. We didn't know what to do. And we were at a loss because somebody told us to do one thing and we didn't think that was right. We're both medical professionals. Our across the street neighbor is a gyne-onc surgeon, and my wife had an issue there. So I called him up on a Saturday and I said, hey, Jonathan, I don't know what to do. My wife just got this preliminary diagnosis and she needs surgery. What do you think we should do? And he goes, well, I do that. I can take care of that. Have her come into my office Monday and we'll get this on the road. And I'm like, awesome. And I knew he was good. It wasn't just a neighbor. I knew he was good. I'd specifically sought him out and I felt very fortunate.
Good, because Bill, not to interrupt you too much, but I'm just thinking, yeah, I got to shout out back. I can, not what I'm looking for there, neighbor.
No. And you know, he took great care of her and he got us plugged into a system for other health issues. And without our neighbor there, we might not have accessed the system in a way that was most beneficial for us. So I am really grateful for good neighbors like State Farm.
Nice. Way to keep the sponsor happy. I will text them. Thank you very much. Paula, Bill, can you come back on every week, by the way?
Thank you. I'll work on it.
Paula, you live in a high-rise building. Mm-hmm. In a high-rise building, do you get to know the neighbors, or are the neighbors just, other people you see and smile and wave to?
Oh, yeah. I know a bunch of my neighbors. So my two neighbors in particular, Caitlin and Steve, was some of my best friends here in the city. We have exactly what Katie was describing. Steve has a dog. There are times he'll text me and he'll be like, hey, I'm stuck at a work event. Can you take my dog out for a walk? And similarly, there are times when back in March, I was in China. I had a cat sitter who was watching my cats, and I was not getting a good feeling about her reliability. And so I was like, hey, Steve, can you go over and check on them? Because I have a cat sitter lined up, but I just kind of have a bad feeling about it. Right. Steve is like right now, I want to move my daybed. It's currently against the wall and I want to move it to the center of the room, but it's a heavy object and I need more hands. This weekend, he's coming over to like help move the daybed.
How'd that relationship begin? Was it kind of like Katie said, they invited you over for dinner when you were the new person?
Basically, I saw Caitlin in the lobby and I liked her shoes. So I said, hey, I like your shoes. We started chatting and we exchanged numbers. A couple of days later, she was in the elevator with Steve and they realized that they both lived on the same floor. So they started chatting. And then a few days later, all of us went out to dinner together and we've been really good friends ever since. And then meanwhile, there are two new girls. So there were these neighbors who lived right across the way from me and they ended up moving to Europe. And so these two new girls have just moved in across the hallway. And we've been like chatting in the hallway a little bit and I don't even know their names. So we haven't formed a friendship yet, but I can tell that one is brewing. So one of these days, I'm just going to put a Post-it note on their door being like, hey, come over for wine. And then like leave my name and phone number and apartment number. So
that's cool.
Yeah. Plus my building has all kinds of like community events. Like the other night they had a casino night where we all played blackjack together. They have trivia nights. You can imagine how good I am at that.
Well, you're rocking at art trivia, Paula.
Exactly. So yeah, the building has a lot of building social events.
Doc, you have on past episodes talked about you've lived in Evanston, I think all your life. I would imagine your neighbor situation's got to be pretty solid.
So we moved into our house 20 years ago. And what's been really interesting is, first and foremost, yes, when we first moved in, people brought bread and introduced themselves. And we got to know on one side, we had people who are older than us. So we've kind of seen them age and gotten the phone calls in the middle of the night that so-and-so fell and ran over to help them and those kind of things. And then we had younger neighbors who eventually moved away. But the kind of cool thing about being in the same neighborhood for 20 years is, when we got there, we didn't have any kids and we were the young ones. And we had these older, more established parents who had teenagers. And then we saw those teenagers go to college and then they left and newer people came in with the young kids. But then our kids were teenagers. And you really see this life cycle. I will tell you, the connection is definitely less than it was 20 years ago. We knew our neighbors a lot better then. I think we were involved in their lives. I mean, our next door neighbors still, like when they go out of town, we watch their house and collect packages. And when we go out of town, they do the same for us. But the connection to the neighborhood maybe is a little bit less. We used to have these really vibrant block parties. And I feel maybe as an older person in the neighborhood now, we're not as involved, whereas you see the younger people there who are kind of going every year, et cetera. But there's definitely connection there. And we definitely, you find that you help each other out.
Do you think it's just people being busy? Is it you don't have the leadership in the neighborhood? Like, why is it not as tight as it used to be?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, for instance, in our neighborhood, there used to be a group of people who were all very close, and you'd see them on summer nights. They'd all grab their chairs, sit outside and drink wine and eat cheese. And so a lot of that, as the group that maybe they were my cohorts, Gen X and a little bit older, as they kind of moved away and did other things, I think some of that social piece has fallen out. Now, I'll tell you, though, there are some people in the neighborhood with much younger kids, and you see them congregating. So the parents with the young kids at the park, there's a park at the end of our block. So you'll see them at the park with the other parents with the younger kids. So I don't know if some of that is a function of aging, as in we are aging. And so those connections have fallen away because, again, our kids are older, et cetera, versus the nature of people has changed. I'm not sure which it is.
I used to live in Chicago, and I understand what Jordan is talking about. I lived in a neighborhood, and Chicago was very neighborhood based. We lived in the Halloween neighborhood. People would bus their kids in from miles around to trick or treat in our neighborhood and we would have to buy hundreds of dollars of candy for the amount of kids that came through. And so we were in the hub of a spoke of a really eclectic neighborhood, and people could walk to the business district. They could walk to the store. We had block parties. The fire department came around and sprayed us with their fire hose. I mean, it was, classic Norman Rockwellian stuff. I think it still exists, but it doesn't quite exist in the same way in our neighborhood here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're car-based, and you're not foot soldiers on the pavement going everywhere you need to go, running into everybody, and then going through their houses for a progressive dinner anymore. It sounds like I want to move into where Paula lives because they got a lot more going on.
There is this serendipity, by the way, that happens when you have to walk places. I do this work on trails in my hometown here in Texarkana. And so I've read a lot about just the huge things that happen community-wise when you have to walk, and how amazing it is for building communities just to walk places. And you just happen to see the same person every day. On the Nix Creek Trail, which I run 3 days a week, there is a guy who has a cat on a leash that he's walking. Every time I go, we go at the same time, and I don't know the dude's name, but he's really cool. We smile and wave. I feel like he's my buddy for 3 years now. I know that guy. He's just a part of our cool community. But what's funny is when I was in Detroit, I had the opposite. Nobody brought stuff over. We moved into our house. Our neighbor I met him outside one time early on, and he was very shy. And the other neighbors I just never met until, and this is what's sad, the people across the street, I always kind of felt like we would be good friends with them. They had kids that were a little bit younger than ours. They looked like the kids were about ready to go to college. And as we were selling our house and selling all of our stuff, they came over for our estate sale. And we sat and talked at our estate sale probably for 2 hours. And I realized these people I'd lived across the road from for 2 freaking years could have been some of my favorite people. They were just amazing people. But the sad news was we let that go. The title of this piece is We Live in a Society. And our stackers are wondering, okay, what does that do with DoorDash and TaskRabbit? Or maybe they're starting to see where we're going. But where Katie goes next is she says, I've seen an uptick in content hard selling the little favors economy. The thesis goes something like this. We've been inundated with therapy speak that essentially provides a script to let ourselves off the hook when we're not in the mood to show up for people in our lives. That line hit me hard, by the way. If I'm not in the mood to show up for other people, I just go, well, it's better for me that if I don't help you. In fact, she says there's a paragraph that recommends telling friends you didn't have the emotional bandwidth to care about them. So could they take their personal crisis elsewhere or schedule a different time to need you? I definitely have felt this uptick just in the universe. I don't want to bother people. Do you think, Paula, is this just the marketing of all these companies starting to get to us? DoorDash going, why have your friends while they're at the restaurant bring you home something? Or why would you want to, they're trying to have an intimate dinner themselves at the restaurant. Why would you barge in on that? Or why would you ask them to move your bed? Is it marketing? Is it society? Or do you even agree with what Katie's saying here?
I disagree with what Katie is saying. So I think that the issue that a lot of people have faced is that, number one, there's a certain cohort of people who are new, they're mobile, right? And so they have newly moved to a particular place. They don't know a lot of people yet. And so they don't yet have people to call on for favors. And so things like TaskRabbit or Uber or Lyft are great for in those use cases. There are also people who, it isn't that they're not in the mood, they're just busy. I mean, like enormously busy. And if something is a genuine emergency, if it's urgent, if it matters, then sure, they're willing to to take a day off or to rearrange their schedule or something. But if you just need to go to the airport, I mean, I go to the airport 1 to 2 times a month. Would I be calling on people 12 to 24 times a year for airport rides? That's just an imposition at that point. And I think the other thing that happens is people, there's probably an 80-20 or maybe 70-30 split where there are some people who naturally have been fairly good at saying, hey, I'm at work, I can't do this. Or they'll blame an externality. Hey, I've got a boss. My boss won't let me off out of my job, so I can't do this. But then you have another cohort of people who their nature is to be a people pleaser. Their nature is to be agreeable. So their nature is to say yes, even when it is a massive imposition, and to not let on how much of an imposition it is. And that particularly gets exacerbated when you have people who have jobs where they're self-employed and others conflate flexibility with availability. And so they'll say, well, you're self-employed or you have a flexible schedule. That means you're available all the time for everything. And so those people, that particular cohort of people who have flexibility in their schedule, get overly burdened and overly called upon.
I do have people that thought that when I first moved to Texarkana. People would ask Cheryl, they're like, so your husband is at home? Like, what the hell does he do all day if he just sits at home? Like, is he just sleep? Like, what's going on? It took a while for them to know about Stacking Benjamins and what I do to go, oh, yeah, he's definitely not napping during the day. But I wish, Paula, that it was that logical. Like, people were as logical as you're talking about. I just think about when our friend Grant Sabatier, he and I were chatting. He was in Detroit for his book tour. And he was talking about the number one thing people were DoorDashing in New York City was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Now, that's his research, not mine. I haven't verified that. But if that's right, the people that are using DoorDash are not people that they're too busy to, I can't be putting all these spreads on bread myself. It's way too much time. There's a laziness factor, Doc.
I mean, it's the ease economy. And so the ease economy is outsourcing everything. And I'll tell you, having kids who are of that age, right, a 16 and 19-year-old, they're so used to using that ease economy. And so, yes, there's this issue of you're spending money on it, but it's not just that. It's also the issue of when someone else comes and asks them for help, they're much more likely to say, oh, just hire someone to do that. Oh, just use this app. And so what happens is it becomes an imposition because they're not used to doing things themselves. They're used to hiring it out. And so when it comes to this article and what we're talking about, this interconnectedness between people, what happens when people do come to you for help and instead of going out and helping them, you say, oh, use this app or hire this person, that chance to connect and help and to be part of a society and to be a neighbor goes away. And I certainly see that in my kids. Like, they don't connect in that way. And there's a lot of conversations in our household going, this is being an adult or this is being an older teenager. No, you actually have to go do these things. And yes, it's an imposition. And yes, you have 2 tests tomorrow. And yes, it's unfair that you didn't sleep well last night. But this is what being a neighbor is, or this is what being a human being is. The things they tell me seem difficult to them. And of course, I'm an adult and they're kids, so it's always going to be a little bit skewed. But sometimes they tell me these things seem so difficult to them. I'm like, no, this is just what people do. But I think we've lost some of that because people don't do it anymore. They hire it out.
Well, and Katie's presenting that as really, while we're talking about being mindful of everybody else's opinion, I think, Paula, the person we're afraid of that person where they're already overburdened, and I don't want to overburden them more. I'm afraid everybody's that person, but I think you presented that person as 1 in 4 different people. But in my mind, I get rid of the other 3 and I'm just constantly worried about that one. And I project upon them that, everybody's this person that's overly busy.
What I think is great about TaskRabbit. So remember what I said earlier about how my neighbor, Steve, who lives in my building, is coming over this weekend to help me move this day bed because I want to basically rotate it 90 degrees from the wall to the middle of the room. I asked him, I said, hey, do you want me to hire this out on TaskRabbit, or would you be interested in coming over and doing this? And what I told him, I was like, if you come over and do this, whatever money I was going to spend on that TaskRabbit guy, I'll use it to buy you beer. We'll go out for drinks afterwards. And so by virtue of phrasing it like that, he knew that I had a viable backup and a viable alternative. And so he wasn't saying yes out of guilt. If he thought that I had no other alternative, he might have said yes out of guilt because he would have felt as though my lack of alternative was his problem. And so, but instead, because I was able to ask the question in the framework of, hey, here are 2 options. They're going to cost me equally as much. Frankly, if I take you out for beers, it's actually going to cost me more because I'm going to be matching you 1 for 1. So it's actually going to cost me double, but here are 2 options.
You're like, TaskRabbit's the cheaper way.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, yes, TaskRabbit would be cheaper. TaskRabbit would be cheaper.
And you don't get a hangover with TaskRabbit.
Yeah.
Should that be their new tagline, Paula? TaskRabbit, no hangover.
Yes.
Well, the
Task
DoorDash-
Rabbit would be both cheaper and
DoorDash
healthier.
is interesting because DoorDash is invisible, right? And but I mentioned my wife got sick before and she needed health care. It was a crisis for us. And how you show up for the small things is how you show up for the big things. And we've got to teach our kids to show up for the small things because they may not show up for the big things. And we were overwhelmed. My wife was recovering. It was hard to go to the grocery store. It was hard to cook a meal. We were exhausted. What our friends did was create a meal train. We could have DoorDashed every night and somebody invisible could have shown up with food for us for weeks. But, friends of ours created a 2 to 3 week meal train where they not only showed up with the food, home cooked with the love that they had for us, but they would stay for dinner if we were up for it. So it was a much different experience. Are we going to DoorDash life, or are we going to open the door, greet the people in our lives? They're showing up for us, we'll show up for them. Is it going to be a reciprocation or a fragmentation?
Yeah, I mean, Doc.
I was just going to say, what Paula said, I 100% agree with what Paula said, and I love that tactic. I think that's a wonderful tactic. The only thing that really interests me there, though, is to point out, like, this concept of I have an issue, and so I go to someone for help, but one of the ways they may interpret it is, how does your issue become my problem? And what I guess the difference is, unless someone's doing that over and over again, right? So if someone's doing that every day, it really becomes like, how is your issue my problem? But otherwise, why isn't the default, in a sense, your issue is my opportunity? And this gets back a little bit to community and society and being there for other people and those, the ties that bind. I think if you go back generations, you find that it was much more your needs, your asking for help is my opportunity to do my part, to be part of society, to be a good neighbor, to do all those things. And I think that's morphed very much in today's economy to, why are you bothering me? I've got enough on my plate.
Yes, right. It is funny how, and I love the way Katie says this, that the therapy thing, right, is the self-care thing, is to not be around other people. Paula?
Well, I think, though, also it's skewed in terms of who receives those requests and who is expected to respond to those requests. So I think whether in today's society or going back generations, it wasn't equally distributed amongst 100% of people. It was predominantly the people whose schedules were viewed as more flexible and whose time was viewed as less valuable. Those were the people who had an undue proportion of those favors requested of them. And I'll give an example from my own life. So a few years ago, I have 2 biological sisters. One of them lives in Australia, and she and her husband and their 2 kids came from Australia to the United States. And this is back when I was living in Las Vegas. So they came to the United States, and they were doing like a month trip in the US, which was great. And they were visiting lots of family everywhere. So they came to visit me in Las Vegas, and they asked me, they said, could you drive us to Los Angeles? Can you drive us?
Wow.
Yeah. Can you drive us from Las Vegas to Los Angeles? Because they wanted to visit some other family in LA. And I had a really hard time trying to defend. I said no, but I could tell that they were really put off by that because they were like, but you make your own schedule. It would be one thing if you had a boss who said, no, you can't have the time off. But you make your own schedule. There's no boss who says that you don't get those days off. So why is it that even though you have the ability to make your own schedule, even though you don't have a boss, you're not in school, you don't have to go to class, you don't have a boss forcing you to come into the office, yet you're still saying no? And that was actually one of those moments where I had to go. I was meeting with a therapist at the time, and I talked to her about it, and I was like, what do I do? And she was like, you need to tell them that you have deadlines. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea, But I mean, it's just a perfect example of, if your schedule is viewed as flexible, then it becomes reasonable to ask you for a ride from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. Versus if I was a school principal or something.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
If you were Paula the mayor.
Right.
Going to a set construction site or something, or in a series of meetings all day.
Right.
But heck, you're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to pick this up after our very, very important. We are way late for the very important part of the show. But in the second half, I want to get to kind of the tactics, because I don't think, Paula, that you're disagreeing with the piece of there is community and we need this community and we need to figure out how to be a part of the community. And so I really like where you were starting to lead us there, which was, how do we phrase this? What are the no's and the yeses? Like, what's the etiquette? You know what I mean? So I don't go to that same person all the time. How do I kind of look at this? Is it quid pro quo? Assuming that you do agree with the premise that we are part of the society and we should want to contribute, and maybe we'll save some money in our wallet, or pay more, to Paula's point.
Or pay more. And pay more and destroy your liver.
Yes, which sounds like a win-win. Win-win. Win for them, win for me, win for my liver. Well, loss for my liver, I suppose. We're going to do that in the second half of the show. It's going to be a little less than the second half, looking at the time. But at the midway point of our show, we have this year-long trivia question, this trivia challenge, where our three contributors are going head-to-head for this just awful dollar store trophy that makes its rounds every year. And Bill, we've got good news and bad news about you competing in this shindig. Do you want the good news first or the bad news?
I'm an ER doc. I'll take the bad news first.
Well, the bad news is you're not winning. The good news is there's two pieces of good news. Number one is that you're in second place because you're going to be playing for my mom, who, as you know, does not do the stairs, doesn't want to be bothered. So you're playing for mom, and she's got 8 points. The other good news, pretty much good news besides that, the other good news is that you get to go before Paula, because as Paula alluded to earlier, she really is great at a ton of stuff, Bill, but not at this. She's got 6. Mom's got 8, and OG pulled even a little further ahead last week by beating Lauren Williams, the Olympian, at I was sure Lauren was going to win that one, Paula. I was so sure she was going to win that one, but OG takes the win last week. So OG has 11, Mom's got 8, and Paula has 6. And we always keep the G's together. So Doc G, you're playing for OG. I think that's a good one.
Don't worry, I'll pull him down. Don't worry. I'll give more of a crazy answer than you, Paula, any day. Don't worry.
The answer for people that are new to the show, that even if the answer is between 1 and 10, Doc G will say 1 million. Like it's pretty good. Doug, what's our question today? We got to have a question so we can figure out who's going to win this thing.
Hey there, Stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I'm taking the under on this discussion. What do I mean? Who needs friends when I can hire a perfectly good stranger? Sure, my social connections might be worse to start off with, but if I hire enough people, sooner or later, one of them will be willing to come back and look at my record collection. I never get why nobody ever says yes to that offer. I mean, I've got old Cheech and Chong. I got Mariah Carey. It's really good stuff. To make sure I can make small talk with these new friends, I looked up TaskRabbit online. Turns out they are now owned by a subsidiary of IKEA, have been since 2017. Where have I been? Does that mean that a guy who looks like a squiggly line, he's only got a profile, like this triangle nose, he's going to come to my house and figure out what all these drawings really mean on my IKEA assembly guides? That'd be a nice start. Hey, here's the start, middle, and finish to today's trivia question. What year was TaskRabbit created under its original name, Run My Errand? Of course, with no spaces, because it's the internet, and you gotta make brand names like that. I'll be back right after I see if I can hire someone to come talk to me about the history of El Caminos. That'd be fun.
All right, Doug is off to look up if TaskRabbit will help him with that. So, Doc, you're going first. TaskRabbit, when was it first created? What year?
I'm going to say 1998. As Run My Errand. Yeah.
Is there a logic train behind that, or is that just feeling good?
Well, I don't know, right? I know that TaskRabbit. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that I never heard of it before the 2000s, and usually I'm hearing about it late. So I assume that it was around before then. So 1998 just sounds good to me, but who knows?
Bill, you think that's early or late?
I think that's around when I was thinking. I'm going to say 2000 because I'm going .com. I'm going back to that bubble.
So they were part of that first iteration of what they call it then, Web 2.0 or.
Yeah, that's what I think. So I'll take 2000 for the win.
Well, Paula gets to go last, which should be a good thing. Someday, Paula, that'll end up working in your favor.
Well,
but you've got 1998 and 2000. What are you thinking?
That's quite a narrow band. So if I have to capture one, either the under or the over, I'm going to capture.
Here it comes.
Yeah, I'm going to capture the over. So I'm going to guess 2001. So
that is
so I'm
just not fair. I feel so used.
Welcome to the trivia segment, Bill. Welcome to the trivia segment.
That's the way this. That's the way this works, Bill.
Disadvantage your mom by making her go in the middle. She loses it.
You know, Bill, you got to feel right at home and a member of the family when Paula can do that to you, because she only does that to friends.
Right. Hopefully she wins.
All right. Doc G is 1998. Bill's got 2000. Paula's got 2001. Who's right? We'll let you know in a minute. We'll be right back. Doc, you kicked all this off by saying 1998. Both Bill and Paula thought it was later. How you feeling now after you heard everybody else's answers?
Oh, I'm feeling great because no matter what, I'm within 3 years, right, of everyone else. So it doesn't matter how, right, whether I win or not, I couldn't be that far away from everyone else. So I'm feeling good about that.
Yeah.
There are two things so far in this show that I think are cute. The first thing is I think it's cute that you don't care if you win or not. You're within 3 years of everybody else, which gives you warm fuzzy. Like you're not a million away. So that's good. The second thing, by the way, that I forgot to shine a light on earlier, I thought it was cute when Bill said that the fire department sprayed him off with a fire hose and he didn't get what was really going on there. Like he thought it was all just fun and games.
Well, I feel really good because they both chose answers near mine. So if it isn't 2000, I'm right there in the middle.
It is nice being in the middle of that sandwich, Bill.
Warm
But
and cozy. It feels good.
If it's 2000, you got it. If it's 99, you get to tie with Doc. So that's not bad. And Paula, you've got 2001 until now. How are you feeling?
I mean, just watch it be 1999. That's going to be amazing. But
I was going to say, Paula, who cares how you feel? Because how many times have we played this record?
I know, right? No, in all seriousness, when I heard the question, my first thought was that smartphones and apps became a thing right around 2010 to 2012, somewhere in there. That was when we moved from like the phones where you had to press the button, like 555, to the actual smartphones that we know today.
That's right. That was so fun, just to spell the.
Yeah, exactly.
Took 9 presses.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, my guess, in all honesty, is that TaskRabbit probably formed as an app, so therefore probably would have formed in the smartphone era, which would be like 2012 plus. So I feel, but I mean, I've got the whole upside after 2001, so I feel great.
So your true guess is 2012.
Yeah, 2012-ish.
That's like your flex guess. I bet it's 1999.
Yeah, I know, right? Watch.
Right. Why
right in the center, like July 15, 1999, like right in the center of the year.
Of course. Doug, we need a winner. Who's got this thing?
Hey there, stackers. I'm your very own friend for hire. You know, if you got enough cash in your pocket. It's Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. I looked on TaskRabbit during the break, and there are no El Camino experts. Maybe that's a slot I can fill in their lineup. Hey, here's a slot our contributors tried to fill. What year was TaskRabbit originally called Run My Errand founded? Created by entrepreneur Leah Busk, a former IBM engineer who came up with the idea when she needed dog food and didn't have time to get it herself. TaskRabbit now is in over 61 cities and in 2022 closed all of its offices to become a 100% virtual company. So, in answer to the question, what year did Leah start TaskRabbit? The correct answer is 2008.
Paula Pant.
Yes!
Taking home the win.
Sorry, Mom.
See, I was only 10 years off. That's not much. I mean, in the realm of time, space-time continuum here, 10 years. It's pretty close.
Bill, you ever seen the Northern Lights?
No, I look forward to it someday. On the list.
Well, seeing the Northern Lights is actually easier than seeing Paula win a trivia question.
Well, I mean, she's so scientific and so
Nailed it.
smart. I mean, she probably overthinks it, is my thought. But we gave her a lot of room here today, so I'm glad we could come in for the win for Paula today.
Nice. Bill's like, you're welcome, Paula. Yeah. Time for the second half of this shindig. Let's get back to our discussion about TaskRabbit, DoorDash, and society, neighborhoods, and getting to know the people around us. Second half of the show is brought to you by depositaccounts.com. Bill, you know what happens when you go to depositaccounts.com?
You deposit something.
you get a deposit of some knowledge, because what you find, it's one of my favorite parts of the show every Friday, because we get to see how interest rates are with savings accounts, CDs, checking accounts, and money markets at the top banks versus the rest. We compare more than 275,000 deposit rates from over 11,000 banks and credit unions for free. Today, the national average of savings account rates in the country is 0.51%. That's of all the banks out there. If you're in the top 1%, which is still hundreds of banks, 4.95. That's down a little bit. I think last week, Paula, we were at like 5.01. So we slipped back below 5%. Depositaccounts.com, where you can check out savings accounts, CDs, checking. Find out, by the way, what banks those are that have the top rates, and it's easy to compare, ditch, switch, and save. All right. Katie brings up how some groups try to make this better, right? Rather than having this be an expense, we can do something. My sister does this. She's part of a buy nothing group. And I know a lot of people in the financial independence community, part of these buy nothing groups. Katie goes, we are turning, this thing into I truly don't understand why, but it sounds like she's really negative here, Doc G, about these buy nothing groups as well. Are you negative on buy nothing groups?
So I've never participated in them. I just, in a sense, I guess that's fine. I believe in buying things. I like buying things. In fact, I love buying things, especially things that make my life better. So I guess I'm not about buying nothing. It's a great mechanism, especially if you're like at one of those places in your life where frugality really is important and you feel like you need to tighten up your budget. Or I really love this idea if you're into environmentalism. So that's one of those places which I really love, because if you're like, I want to buy nothing because I don't want to add to the clutter and the junk of the world and the plastic and all that, I think it's wonderful. Like
Sean Mullaney said, remember when we heard him at Camp Phi Southwest, our good friend Sean Mullaney said, it's wild when you walk into a Walmart or a Target and then you realize that one day, no matter how much attention people pay to all this stuff, it's all going to end up in a landfill. And you go, oh my God, now every time I walk into any place that's selling a bunch of stuff and I look around, I go, oh my, this is all going to be in a landfill. He's not wrong. Yeah. And now compare that to the other way around, which is buying things you value from people you believe in and supporting the makers of those products or services which you think add to the world. Like, I like that look better. Maybe it's just a little more positive for me, but I think the same idea goes behind them. But Bill, when it comes to these buy nothing groups, I mean, there's nothing that stops us in being friends with these people. This could widen your friend group.
I've heard people talk very passionately about them for reasons that Jordan has elucidated. I have not personally participated. I probably should get my hangers, as Katie talks about, from these buy nothing groups. I probably should get a tour of a landfill. We go on tours of Target and Walmart. When was the last time I ever saw a landfill? Where are they? It would probably blow my mind to see one in real life.
Just the stuff I saw just this morning online. I saw one designer did a fashion show from a landfill where they famously drop all kinds of clothing. And these models just took clothing from the landfill and put it on. And it was all really nice clothing that had gone there to die. And it was before its time.
I hope they wanted them. You weren't looking for the clothes at all.
They had clothes. Paula, buy nothing groups.
So here's the issue is that oftentimes with a buy nothing group, with flea markets, with anything of this nature, oftentimes people are not going there to look for something specific. People are going there to browse, and they come home with knickknacks and junk, and it becomes clutter that fills their basement and their garage. If there is something really specific that you want or need, like this microphone stand that I am using right now, there is a very, very low probability that I would have gotten a microphone stand from a buy nothing group. It's an extremely specific requirement that I needed during a very limited window of time, right? If your acquisition of material goods is limited to, I only get very specific things that I need that are pre-written on a list, right? And that list lives... I write out this list, and once or twice a month, I go and get everything that's on my list. Then you know that you're limiting your acquisition of new items to only the things that you actually need. But if you're just randomly browsing, I think that you just end up getting more stuff that you really don't need. Now, in this particular case, if you're not buying it if it's just sort of a trade. Okay, fine, that's a cool hobby, I guess, if that's how you want to spend your free time. But I don't see that being a legitimate, not legitimate, that's not the right word. I don't see that being like efficacious in
efficacious.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I think let's put it in a different way. You're saying intention is everything.
Exactly.
You're welcome.
Right. It's not. I was going. My garbled way of saying it is it's not efficacious in the procurement of items that you genuinely need in order to function in your day-to-day life.
Doc, what do you think about efficacious procurement?
So many wrong things just went through my head there that I don't even know where to. I don't even know where to start. You made me speechless here. Yeah.
That's a first for everything here. Let's talk about that, Doc. What Paula brought up earlier. Let's just go there now. I wanted to ask first about that question specifically of these buy nothing groups, and can you actually clean this up online? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I think is where we land there. But let's go back to the neighborhood, because your neighborhood is not as together as it used to be. Like, is there some etiquette around how you meet the neighbors and how you kind of play this game? Do you have some thoughts for our stackers on, okay, I want to start becoming more of this, a part of my society. Maybe then I'll lower my cost to these apps that, quote, make it easier for me. Where do you start there?
Well, I love the welcome to the neighborhood. I think if you want to be a good neighbor and if you want to start connecting with the people around you and eventually benefit from the fact that you're now a society of people who help each other, I think when someone moves into your neighborhood, you should knock on their door and say hello, or bring them, like someone brought us a loaf of bread from Panera back in the day when a loaf of bread from Panera meant something, right? Back 20 years ago. I think that's a really good way to start. So you never want to have one of your first main interactions with someone that you barely know being, hey, can you help me with this thing? It's much more, how do we kind of build those bonds of community, right? So first thing, you welcome them to your neighborhood. I love community get-togethers, right? If you have block parties or if you get community dinners or those kind of things, something where people, especially in the beginning, can just show up and be a part of something. I also think that there is just, being a good neighbor. So for instance, when we moved into our neighborhood, as I was saying, I've watched people age in and age out, and the people next door to us, I've, watched them get older and older, and they're in their 80s now. And so, it's just normal. When we go to shovel our snow, we generally will just then shovel their path and shovel up their stairs. It's just what we do. I don't even think of it as different. It's just part of me shoveling my snow now. And so I think give where you can and be generous where you can. And then it makes the other side much easier when you are in a bind, when you do need something, whether it's a lemon because you don't have what you need for your recipe, or something bigger like, hey, I'm really in a bind here. Can you drive me to the airport? When you get to that stuff that's a little bigger, you actually have real connections there. And so I think that's how you do it.
Well, I love that idea, because I love the idea of don't wait for them. You be the catalyst, and make it a positive catalyst. Because I think about those neighbors across the street I mentioned earlier. I remember one time Cheryl said, I made extra cookies. I'm just going to take them across the street and I'm going to reach out. And I remember telling her, I'm like, they never reached out to us. Like we've lived here for like a year. What the hell? Well, no, don't take, I'll leave that. I got a great home for those cookies. And I think that was stupid on my part. Even though we'd lived there for a year, I should have taken the lead. And it turned out I was the worst for it.
And you know, it's a trick too. We each have unique gifts, and those are the easiest things to volunteer. So I'm a doctor. I know about medical stuff. So when the people next door, when the gentleman fell and needed help getting up, like it was really easy for me to run over there and help him. And I know about how you hurt yourself when you fall. And I know about the safe ways to help someone get up. And so that's my wheelhouse. Like that's my natural gift, something I'm good at. It doesn't take me a lot of energy to then offer those type of things to other people. But then I do think that engenders returns in a more connected neighborhood.
What do we really own in life? We own our time, we own our skills, we own what we can control. And I'm a doctor too. And, I get calls later at night from friends saying, I got this problem, what do I do? And I welcome those calls because it's taking advantage of a skill that I have that I can share with the village, share with the community that I'm in, share with my friends to maybe hopefully help them avoid going to the ER or to access the system in a different way so that their anxiety is alleviated. I give of those things kind of generously because, I train for my work where I go earn money, but I earn a life in helping others for no reason at all other than that they have a need.
That is specifically, Bill, why when I saw this piece, I thought of you and having you on here, because as a guy who's an introvert in real life and who, I struggle to just go say hi to people I don't know. I hang out with Bill Yount. I don't know, Paula or Doc, if you guys have hung out with Bill Yount at a conference, but this guy goes up and talks to freaking everybody, like just everybody. And by the time the conference ends, I don't think there's anybody in the 2,000 person conference that doesn't know who Bill is, and he's on a first name basis with them. Like I love that. So for our introverts out there, Bill, how do you kind of force yourself out of this? Well, it's therapeutic for me to be alone, to know I really need to be a part of this society and get my ass out there.
I have a conference hack for you. I mean, we go to conferences by ourselves often. Sometimes we go with our spouses, but often we're going by ourselves. When I go to a conference, I'll book a dinner, a table for 8. And during the day in the conference, I'm going around to people saying, hey, you want to have dinner tonight? Do you have any plans? I go to the speakers. Everybody is going to eat. Why not eat together? So, I mean, there's a little hack for that. You don't have to eat alone. You're only eating alone if you choose to do so.
By the way, one of my longtime stackers know that's one of my favorite books, Never Eat Alone. Keith Ferrazzi, have you read that book?
Not yet, but I will now.
It's a great book. My favorite meme of any book is a dude who's sitting in his workplace break area by himself reading Never Eat Alone. so just fantastic. Paula, you talked about this idea of, hey, this isn't mandatory, and I've got this backup, so don't feel bad about saying no. I love that. Mm-hmm. Is there also kind of a quid pro quo thing going on, though, between you and Steve? Like, if I help Steve, Steve will help me, then I'm one up, or is it not that?
I mean, the phrase quid pro quo sounds a bit too transactional. I think Steve knows that if he ever needs help, he'll call me. And on occasion that's happened, like, when mostly it's dog related stuff. If he's being held late at work and he knows that his dog needs to be taken out, he'll text me and be like, hey, can you take out Ollie? But that actually doesn't happen that often. Like, over the 4 years that I've known Steve, I think he has certainly helped me out significantly more than I've ever helped him.
So you owe him.
Yeah, I do. I do. Big time, for sure.
But what's interesting about that is, you talked earlier about the people that get picked on all the time. I think to some degree, Paula, then there is, you're right. It's very transactional, but in your head, there should be a little bit of quid pro quo. Like, how many times have I asked this person for help versus them? Like, do I go back to this well for the 87th time?
Yeah.
Because there are some people I feel like pick on me all the time. And I'm like, man, I'm not your buddy as much as you think that I am.
Yeah, that's probably what Steve is thinking about me right now. Well, yeah, well, it's...
What's that,
art
Bill?
to giving and there's an art to receiving, and we're used more to receiving, and giving is where everything starts. Just like Paula said, I'm going to go put a Post-it note on somebody's door and saying, hey, we're having wine here at 7, be here. You're giving them an opportunity, and they're going to want to take it because out of sheer curiosity, and who wouldn't want to meet Paula anyway? But
well, you also find over time, like, this was a big aha for me. Giving is where the fun is. Mm-hmm. You would never think that. You always think when you grow up, that receiving is where it's at. Like, wow, I got a gift. How cool is that? The biggest gift is giving a gift. Like, that's kick ass. But Paula, you were going to say?
Oh, well, so going back to the reason that I keep calling on Steve for favors is he's the friend in the building with a giant toolbox, and he's the guy who's got like the drill and and so he's the one who can do that handy person kind of stuff. Whereas like I can help you set up a podcast,
But here's the thing. Here's what I love about
your next
that.
memo at work.
But here's what I love about that. So what you were doing is what we were talking about a little bit is basically that's Steve's gift, right? This is what he's good at. But you can clear the deck by taking him out to dinner. You can clear the deck by saying, hey, I have this, well, he's married, but let's say he was single. You could be like, hey, I have this girlfriend. I think you guys would do really good together. Let me set you up. Like, there's so many different ways where you can show your appreciation for Steve, and he'll probably want to help you in the future. Like, take him out to dinner, buy him a 6-pack. I saw this great bottle of wine. I thought you'd like it, and you've been so great to me here. I wanted to just get you something.
And how fun is that, Jordan? How fun is that? Spending your time and your energy thinking about what would light somebody else up. Like, those are also some of my best moments of the day.
And people forget to professionally, like, for instance, Joe, you and I, and Paula, you and I, and Bill, you and I, all of us work very collaboratively together. And so it's one of my favorite things is when I hear someone talking about like, no, you should have Joe on your show to talk about this. Like, Joe is the expert in this thing. You should really have him on your show, or you should take Paula's class, because Paula has this, she has this course about real estate, and it's like, I've heard people rave about it. You should take Paula's course. So like, there's so many different ways to integrate that and to just be giving, and like, so that you don't have to keep score. Yeah.
Yeah, or you say Bill's been sprayed by a fire hose. He knows all about that. Have that guy.
Well, I mean, it is hard to feel in debt to someone else, and it's hard to give without expecting or letting the other person think that they should expect something in return. These things are arts as opposed to hard skills. We have to learn them and not let people feel that they need to return the favor.
Yeah, it is. I'm 100% with you. And being mindful too, that the same people get picked on all the time, and knowing, who that is, spreading that around a little bit. It just amazed me how cultural this is. I want to end on this note. Paula, I remember when I was in Kathmandu, I went to the airport, and, Katie in this piece, and you guys brought up earlier, like going Uber, right? I felt like we were the only people that Ubered to the airport, because everybody else brought their whole damn family to the airport.
The airport trip is a big one there, but also people fly a lot less there. People don't take business trips there.
They're not going 2 or 3 times a month like you were talking about.
Yeah. Over there, it's like you've spent years and years. 4 years ago, you applied for a tourist visa to the UK, and 4 years later, you finally got it. And so it's this big life event. Which is very different than here.
People have no idea what I'm talking about. We got to the airport. I was sure security was going to be 6 hours long because there were so many people there. I got through security in about 5 minutes because I would say 1 out of 25 people were flying. The rest of people were there to say goodbye, which was really cool. I just thought it was really, this idea that I'm burdening somebody, a family member or somebody to go to the airport. I actually remember OG, saying one time to me, he's like, why wouldn't Cheryl Uber home from the airport? Why are you going to pick her up? I'm like, just because it's my spouse and I want to say hi. Plus, Paula's been to our airport. Tell us how our Uber works, Paula.
Oh my goodness. That Uber. I have attempted to Uber from the Texarkana airport. It did not go well. Let's just put it that way.
I think it was an hour and a half after the plane landed.
Wow.
You finally made it to our house.
Oh, I literally was like, I reached the point where I was like, okay, I can sleep on this table. I can pull the sweater over myself and tie it around my eyes. There's a vending machine right here, so I won't be in a caloric deficit.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Just so people don't think I'm a complete jerk, why didn't I come get her? I wasn't in town. I wasn't
You were
there.
in Nepal. Ironically.
Yeah.
You were in Nepal.
Yeah, that's funny.
But in Nepal, the whole family goes to the airport. But that's because you are 40 years old and boarding an airplane for the first time in your life. Mm-hmm. So that's why there's such a it's such a major life event.
Just as a guy that was back to community, just as a guy that was a stranger there and seeing these people, it lit me up. It was that community, I think, is that important to us. As you all can hear, I really love this piece. I think it's worth reading. Great job, Katie. We've linked to it in the show notes if you'd like to take a look. We're going to end here the way that we end every show, which is every Friday, which is finding out what these brilliant contributors of ours are up to. We'll have our guest of honor go last. Doc, what's happening at the amazing Earn and Invest podcast? By the way, I had somebody pitch me just this week who said this guy's going on a bunch of hit shows like Earn and Invest, and then list a couple other big shows. It was just cool seeing Earn and Invest was the first thing that the PR rep was telling me that I had to have this guy on.
Yeah, I paid them. I'm like, right, Joe, and tell Joe. That's what you got to do. Tell Joe that he's been on some really great shows, including first Earn and Invest. So you asked what's happening on Earn and Invest. We are crossing the red line, that line you're not supposed to cross. I have physician Disha Spath on from the Frugal Physician, and we are talking of all things politics. So we are talking about the presidential election and what that means to our finances. We don't go deep into I like this candidate versus I don't like this candidate, but more about are there stark differences about what these candidates are offering? And specifically, what are some do's and don'ts around what might be a stressful situation, which is a presidential campaign? Very, very different conversation. Not an interview. Like, I do tons of interviews. I love interviewing people. This is more of a conversation where we just kind of talk about how could this affect our finances and why it matters.
Are we going to leave this conversation angry like every other political discussion?
I don't believe so. But again, none of the conversation specifically says, this politician is right versus this politician is right. But we do get into some specifics about kind of what's your worldview, right? Like, what do you think about student loan debt, right? What do you think about things like Medicare and Social Security, et cetera? So we talk about some of that. So I don't think people come out of it feeling revved up or hostile, but hopefully they'll just be a little more thoughtful about what financial moves you might want to make or not want to make when the world seems to be rapidly changing in front of your eyes.
Well, I was joking about the hostility, actually, because I can't imagine you having that conversation in the first place. Like, it would be a very measured, in-depth, deep dive, which is why I love the Earn and Invest podcast. Paula, what's going on the Afford Anything podcast?
On the Afford Anything podcast. So, of course, every other episode, we've got you, Joe, joining us.
Brilliant.
We also, in terms of a deep dive, we've did a nearly 2-hour-long interview with Michael Kitces.
2 hours.
Nearly. It was an hour and 45 minutes was, I think, how it shook out. But with Michael Kitces, we asked the core question, is the economy worse than we think? And so for the next hour and a half, we learn about the nuances of the economy and whether or not the economy is doing worse than we think, which is a fear that a lot of people have, particularly given how much of our stock growth has been driven by mostly NVIDIA and a small cohort of other tech companies. So we talk about NVIDIA, we talk about AI, we talk about just the world economy and asset allocation and financial planning as it pertains to that.
Wow, Michael Kitces is talking financial planning?
I know, right?
Does he know anything about that? For people who don't know who Michael Kitces is, he's the go-to man on that topic.
Yes. He was the keynote at Morningstar, and I'm sure you've heard Joe talk about Morningstar a bunch of times. Morningstar is like the preeminent investor brand, and it's Morningstar is an investment brand that is followed by a lot of financial advisors. So it's followed by the industry insiders, and Michael Kitces was the keynote at the Morningstar conference. So he is the rock star financial advisor at a conference of financial advisors.
And if he had opinions, he'd be better. He's so fantastic. But you know what? You have the Michael Kitces. We have the Dr. Bill Yount with us. So there, Paula.
Oh, my goodness.
Right there.
Oh, my goodness. I've listened to that.
Yeah. What are you and Jackie up to at Catching Up to Fi? Thank you so much for joining us, Bill. It is about damn time we got this done.
I've always wanted to join the circus, and it's nice to be a part of the crew. But I listened to Paula's episode, and I have to recommend everybody go do it because it is one of those episodes that will stick with you. And we're trying to make those episodes, too, at Catching Up to Fi. We have coming up Joe Saul-Sehy talking to Stacking Jefferson.
Wow.
And we have Vicki Robin coming up, talking about coming of aging. We have a 2-hour conversation with the godmother of Fi and her latest project. Her latest project is talking about how we age and the challenges there, which actually dovetail well with Katie's post today. It's all about society, community, engagement, real engagement, and not walling ourselves off in our castles, but opening ourselves up to our villages. And that's what she's all about. And then we've had all of you on the show. We're very fortunate. We're really meeting and greeting our late starter audience who found financial independence later in life where they need to be so they don't feel alone and they can join the journey with us. And thank you, all 3 of you, for joining us on the show.
Well, I love that mission. And, Bill, we say all the time what you guys say. We parrot your message, which is you can't go back and take back the past, right? You start with where you are and you just make it better every day. And how exciting is that? It can be a really exciting journey.
That works for about everything, really.
Yeah. Well, that is the Catching Up to Fi podcast. If you missed it, also Afford Anything and Earn and Invest. We'll link to all these phenomenal shows on our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. So just go find the show notes and you'll find all these brilliant people's work. All right, Doug, you've got it from here, man. What should we have learned today?
So what's stacked up on our to-do list for today? First, take some advice from our panel. Have you tapped into a real community of friends? It turns out that people want to be needed. And for most of you, so do you. That'll save you money and you'll build social capital. Second, if you can't find a friend to do the task, is it truly worth the monster upcharge to have it delivered? Sometimes, maybe, but often you can save a ton just by eliminating the task altogether or doing it yourself. But the big lesson? Don't tell TaskRabbit they need an El Camino expert. Turns out they have air quotes experts to air quotes help them decide what categories are profitable. Well, air quotes, TaskRabbit, your air quotes are missing out on a great opportunity. There's dozens. Okay, there's like tens of us. There's a couple of us out here who are big El Camino fans. Thanks to Bill Yount for joining us today. You'll find Bill's podcast, Catching Up to Fi, wherever you're listening to us now. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thanks to Paula Pant for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you listen to finer podcasts. And thanks also to Doc G for joining us. Want to hear more from the nicest guy in podcasting? Yeah, sorry, Joe. Tune in to Earn and Invest wherever the finest podcasts are found. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamins Show.